Welcome to Western Wisconsin Journal. I'm Bobby Pominville, your arts editor, and I have another author coming in today, and I must say she has written some wonderful books. And her name is Diane Detman. I'd like to welcome you to this show, Diane.
Well, thank you so much, Bobby. I'm pleased to be here.
And I know that you're a skilled presenter, instructor, and writer. And I've just been really interested to hear about your books. So we'll start with your background and what led you to writing books.
Well, it's kind of a long story, so you have a little while.
Yeah, I have time.
Okay, great. I grew up in North Minneapolis, and my mother was a writer. She journaled, and she had done a small children's book, and then she was a painter. She's very creative. So I kind of watched her at the table at night writing letters to her mother and Finnish and doing different kinds of writing and journaling. And so I decided at the age of 4 that I really liked writing, and I had a little rainbow tablet, and I would write in there with little squiggles. I didn't really say anything, but I was writing. And then when I went to Mounds View High School out in Arden Hills, and I had 2 really great teachers that really inspired me in the writing area. One was a creative writing teacher. I took a class there, and we actually published our stories in an anthology. So it was like my very first publication, and it was just very inspiring. And then I also had another teacher, an English, 10th grade English teacher, who inspired us with, she read a lot to us and had us write. So those were 2 really big influences on me. And then, of course, as an elementary teacher, I graduated from the U of M and started with the St. Paul schools in 1969. And during the time I was with St. Paul, I went through national boards as a teacher, which required a lot of writing, very rigorous program to be certified. And so that improved my writing and drew me closer into the process. And then I went to Hamline University and got my master's, and again, more writing. So it's a lot of writing. And then in 2000, and then I was a literacy coach the last 6 years of my teaching career. And at that point, I took a new position 3 weeks after my husband's funeral. I took a new position as a literacy coach in St. Paul at a school where I had to travel all over the country. And I did staff development for teachers.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, so then in 2006, I retired from the St. Paul schools, and now I can follow my passion of writing.
Well, now that, that really piques my interest because of education being in my background. A literacy coach, now are you talking about for the teachers?
Yes, for the teachers.
And what kind of things would you do?
I would go in and do model lessons for the children on how to write memoir, different kinds of activities with reading, and studying different genre. So it really helped to connect me with the writing. And then I went to national training throughout the United States where the trainers trained us to come back and train the teachers. So I got some hands-on, first-person types of training in that area.
That's amazing.
It was wonderful. It was a blessing. This was after my husband passed away, and it was kind of a stretch for me, but in the long run, it worked out.
It was perfect for you.
Absolutely.
And I admire very much that the St. Paul schools had a literacy coach. I mean, do you think that's a common thing?
It is more so. They're starting actually to phase them out because of budget and type of thing.
Yeah.
But a lot of us were hired to help support schools that were struggling with their test scores. So.
Right. Oh, how perfect is that?
And I'm sure you can identify with that.
Oh, yes. And because, I always bring this up with other people, and I know my audience has heard this, but because I think it's so important that students can read and read well, because it just opens the gates to other things. So many important things really come from being a good reader.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Totally.
So I'm totally in support of what you do, and how wonderful for you.
Well, thank you.
Now, my next question is kind of related, but I know we're going to talk about your books in a bit. What inspires you to write?
Well, that is something I had to think about when I saw that question, because I really wasn't sure. It's just always been a part of me. And so I think what I thought was that going to conferences, writers' conferences, just like with teachers, you come together as a group and
Oh,
you
yeah.
interface and exchange ideas and give each other feedback and support. So that's one of the things that really inspires me. But the main thing is the feedback from my readers.
Oh, yes. And you have a blog, don't you?
I have a blog, yes I do, and a website.
So you get immediate feedback, and isn't that really a nice thing to have?
It is, and it's also wonderful to go to. I do a lot of events locally, and actually I've done some internationally. I've been presented one of my books in Finland in 2009 at an international seminar there. And I just like interfacing with the people as they come up, whether it's a local craft show here in Hudson. I was at the Hudson Tour of Homes, and I was promoting my book there. And I had so many people stop by, and some widows shared their stories with me, and some people, a lot of people purchased the book, and I autographed it for them. I really enjoy that part of interfacing with people, and it's very inspiring. So
that's wonderful, because I've heard so many writers say, well, I can't get started. And, evidently that isn't a problem for you.
It isn't. I've actually done writing for so long, and I used to do, I've read Natalie Goldberg, which she's a guru in the writing area, and a couple other ones like Julia Cameron, and they had activities, and I would do like daily writing, just whatever came to my head. I journaled, so it's always been a part of my life, and so it doesn't take me long to kind of land, but the hardest part for me is staying motivated to do it, and the self-doubt kind of creeps in.
Oh, yes.
But yet I was able to connect with an author by the name of Elizabeth Sims, and she writes for Writer's Digest. She's an editor there, and she and I have kind of built some little relationship in terms of supporting each other. And so she just said, this is her quote. She's emailed me one day when I was kind of down and out. Be patient with the process and stick with it. So that's really true. It would be true for any writer at any level. So
wow,
yeah,
very, very good. Well, that's just excellent. I didn't expect that answer, but how fun to hear that. Now, what is coming up for you with future books?
Well, I have one in the process right now. I've taken the leap from writing memoir. Both the books I have currently are memoir and nonfiction. So I've taken the leap from memoir to fiction.
Oh, my.
Huge step for me. And so what I'm trying to do with this, it's a book that's inspired by a friendship I had with a Japanese-American girl back in the 1950s. And both her parents were interned in the Japanese internment camps. So this is a historical fiction piece, and it's about a young girl, Japanese-American girl, and her family's imprisoned in the internment camps, and it's during World War II, and deals with the challenges they have to overcome and how to start their life over again after being dispersed from the camps. So, and then it's also going to have a certain amount of woven in about the World War II on the Italian front. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So.
Well, now I found that interesting myself because I was involved with a Veterans Memorial in my hometown in North Dakota, and of course I was doing the music with the choir, but I had looked at the different monuments for the different wars, and I found my uncle's name on World War I. Then I found two more names on World War II. These were not deaths in the war, but they were people who served. And then, of course, there were other wars, and then there was the main monument to everyone who'd served. And it touches me a lot that you would do that. Now, that must be hard to research.
It is. That is the one thing I'm finding. The memoir was much easier to write because all the research was in here and in my notebooks.
Definitely.
Whereas this, I'm finding I'm doing a lot of reading, a lot on searching on the internet. But I'm learning a great deal, and it's really broadening my appreciation for that family that we befriended them. I mean, we were very close.
Did.
In a very, very close way, our families. And the working title is Courageous Footprints. And,
oh, nice.
Well, and Where that came from was I used to walk this little girl to school when I was probably in second grade and she was in kindergarten, and she followed my footprints through the snow. And then I lost touch with her. She moved away from North Minneapolis probably when she was about 7 or 8, and moved back to California where they were originally from.
A lot of them live there.
Yeah, and so we lost touch, but you know how we reconnected?
No.
Facebook.
Oh, good. That's a great story.
Yeah, and it makes you realize how important technology has really become and how we can bridge them and network and make connections again.
So you're sort of looking through her eyes when you're writing this.
Yes, I am.
And how poignant that her parents were interred, and you had to, and now you will be exploring all those different things. But it is fiction.
It is fiction, yes.
So not everything will be exactly what she experienced.
Right, or all the Japanese did at that point in time, and it will be fictionalized. Yet, because it's historical fiction, it has to have a certain base of fact. So I want to make sure I've got timelines kind of correct and the circumstances correct. So it is.
Well, good luck with that.
Well, thank you. It's taking longer than I thought, but.
And when you get farther along, let me know.
I will.
And we can talk about it again.
That would be great, even if you'd like to read a couple chapters.
I would love to.
That would be perfect.
Please, think about me. I'd love to do that.
I will.
Now, this would be a good time to maybe talk about your other contributions. You also write for some other organizations. I don't know if I'm saying the right thing, a foundation of some kind?
Also, well, the book is endorsed by a number of different organizations.
Yes.
The first group that actually picked the book up and put it on their website is the American Widow Project, which is a nonprofit that supports military widows, widowers, and their families.
Oh.
And they were delighted to have the book on the website, and several of the widows who have purchased the book have contacted me and said that it has really helped them.
Oh, wonderful.
So that, to me, is the purpose that I wrote 28 Snow Angels was for that purpose, is to share that story. And then I also write for the national organization, Women, I have so many of these, I can never, the American, Open to Hope Foundation. I promote my book on there. And
yes, Open to Hope. I've never heard of it until I read about it.
Right, and then also Women's Voices for Change is the national organization. That's right, and I submit essays to that organization on a regular basis.
How interesting! I had no idea about those, so I'm glad you told us. Okay, now where would your book or books be on display? Where could we look for them?
All right, that's a good question, because one of the bookstores, I'm afraid, is going out of business.
Oh dear, that's happening.
Yeah, but I'm hoping that'll change, because the Chapter 2 Books in Hudson has been a marvelous supporter for me. I've had 2 different events there, and they've always been so good about promoting me. And also, it's also at Stillwater Books, Valley Booksellers.
Oh,
in Stillwater.
good. Yes,
And,
yes, I'm familiar with that.
Yes, it's a wonderful bookstore, and they too have been just marvelous supporters of both books. I've had several events there, and I know if I have another book published, that I'm sure they'd be more than happy to have me come back. So they've been just so supportive of authors.
Very good.
And then it's also on many independent books. Sellers are carrying it, depending upon where in the country they're located.
Okay.
And then 28 Snow Angels actually got picked up by Barnes & Noble for their bookstores, which is very unusual for a self-published book.
And I go there too.
Do you? Okay, so it is. It's at most of the Twin City bookstores on their shelves. I did a book signing event at the Roseville Barnes & Noble, which was my dream. I wanted, as a writer, to someday be an author. Used to go to all sorts of author events at Barnes & Noble, and then
that's where you really come.
I have come along.
You have been there and been featured. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's so. And then of course it's on Amazon and on Barnes & Noble, and 28 Snow Angels is in both Kindle, on ebook and paperback.
Oh yeah.
On both Barnes & Noble.
I saw that too when I was reading about you. And I know a lot of people go on Amazon. And you can order it there too, right?
You sure can.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And either form, paperback or hardcover.
Right.
And I do know a lot of people who are readers, voracious readers.
Uh-huh.
I mean, some were English teachers and some are friends of mine. And I know there's an audience out there, a big audience. They just have to know about your book.
That's right. And the farther out it gets, the more people are reading it and giving me feedback on it. It's been marvelous. It's been covered in a couple magazines, just like a retired teacher's magazine carried a full article on the book and on my writing life. So I've been very blessed in a lot of ways with people that have embraced the book and moved things forward.
That's a great area right there, because I think of my teacher friends, and so many of them are just wonderful, wonderful into books and readers and always recommending things for me.
Oh, good.
So there you go.
And that's how it works.
That's right. Now, is anything coming up currently as far as a signing or a reading or anything?
Not in the near future. I'm in the process of scheduling events.
Oh, yeah.
And so
January, after all.
Yes. But I do have an event which is actually my second time at this organization. It's Cook Funeral Homes in Cottage Grove. And I've a few months ago, I did a PowerPoint presentation to a grief group, an aftercare group there of widows and widowers and people who are dealing with loss. Yes. And to be honest with you, Bobby, I was apprehensive about doing it because I wasn't quite sure how the book would be received. But I will tell you, the people were so touched by my book, and they were so hopeful. You know, and and so often I tell people that's why it took me 7 years to write the book, to really get it done, because it was such a hard story to tell. Oh, right. So I wasn't sure how it would be received, and now that it's helping people. So I'm doing another event there with another group in February, on February 3rd. And it's open to the public, I think. It's but you have to call ahead to make reservations.
Okay, tell me the name of it again.
It's Cook, K-O-K Funeral Homes.
K-O-K. Oh, I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah. And so, I think they're in Cottage Grove. And I think you can go to their website and you can actually look it up. Or they do have press releases that go out to local newspapers too. So.
And are these like little groups you can sign up to go to a little class and hear you? And is that the way it works? Or?
Well, some of them are like that. This one is more of a one-time, end of the time of the group, the last session they had me come in and do a presentation.
Oh, okay.
And then I've also done events like with different groups, women's groups and that type of thing, just presenting and sharing.
Well, and I know we were talking about the Hudson Women's Club, and I think we really need to get you over here again.
Well, I'd love to do that.
I hope that works out. And, you know, I didn't point out, you're actually locally located, so you're in Afton.
Right in Little Afton.
So you're very close to us.
Right, and
Wonderful.
Afton has been very supportive of me also with my writing, which is good. I did my kickoff, actually, my release party at the Sailway Cafe in Afton.
Oh, yes, I know where that is.
And so, and at the Historical Society, they featured Miriam, daughter of Finnish immigrants, for a session. And so, and the Creative Cottage, which is closed right now, but there's new owners there. But she carried my book for quite a couple of years.
Oh, well,
so
I love that community. So many wonderful things go on there. Now, you're going to read for us, and we'll do, first we'll do the Angels book.
Okay, 28 Snow Angels.
And do you want to just say a little bit about it before you read?
I sure can do that. This is the book right here, 28 Snow Angels, A Widow's Story of Love, Loss, and Renewal. And the book, like I said, took 7 years to write, with lots of stops and starts, working titles, all sorts of different things that went on that weren't exactly the easiest to overcome, but I did. And in 2009, I went to the La Jolla Writers Conference, and I read out a small section of the book, the piano chapter, and I'll read a little bit of that today.
Oh, good.
And I received such good feedback from the presenter and the facilitators that they pushed me forward and said, you need to keep going. Then I contacted another consultant through my Writer's Digest, Adair Lara, and she pushed me forward. She's a consultant in memoir and does classes at the University of California. And so she pushed me forward. She said, you need to finish that book and get it done. So a year later, I found an editor on LinkedIn. See how that technology works for.
Oh, okay.
And she's out in New Hampshire, and so, or in Massachusetts, and she said she would do the edit on it. So
was that a hard search, finding an editor or a publisher?
well, I self-published with Outskirts Press, who basically did the first one.
Yeah, okay.
And the editor I had to find myself, and I don't know. Sometimes I think there's a divine intervention with writing because paths cross for a purpose and a reason sometimes. And I found that my editor and she did a fabulous job, and she came up with the title. I had about 12 different working titles over the time that I was working on this book. And 28 Snow Angels. The 28 comes from the 28 years my first husband and I were married.
Oh.
And the Snow Angels comes from my first New Year's Eve alone, where instead of going out to dinner with friends, I went out in our yard in Afton under the stars and attempted to make 28 snow angels, one for every year that I was married.
Oh,
And I only made it to 19 because I ran out of energy.
that's a great story.
Thank you.
And the title is so appealing to me.
Thank you. My editor would be so pleased.
I just thought of it I thought of that when I was looking at the material, and I thought, I would pick up a book like that.
Well, good. And I've had a lot of compliments on the cover, believe it or not, too. So
Very attractive. I don't know how well it's showing up, but the snow angel and the snowflakes, it's very appealing.
thank you. And it was awarded a runner-up in the 2013 Book Festival
Right,
Awards.
I wanted to mention that too. It did win an award,
Yeah,
so
so
I
I'm very pleased
congratulate
with-
you on
thank
that.
you. So,
I'll let you read when you want to, and I'm very interested to hear it because I haven't read it myself.
okay, I thought I maybe just would show one little quick picture
Oh,
here,
sure.
too.
Surely.
This is this will help you kind of frame the story. This is my first husband and I. We met in a bar in 1971. We were married in 1972, and we did everything together. We never were able to have children, so we did everything together, hooked at the hip. So when I lost him, it was a very, very difficult loss. Then, like I told you, a few weeks later, I took a new job with St. Paul Schools, and I ended up traveling all over the country with these three new people. And so therefore, these people became my strongest supporters. They kind of took me under their wing and kind of pulled me along. And then also making decisions on home improvement projects was a major problem for me.
Oh my, that looks like a huge project.
Yeah, so some I made good decisions, some not so good. So that's the thing. But my husband was a piano player, and so his piano. One thing I do talk to a lot of the widows about, widowers, is that releasing the personal belongings, which is often a very difficult thing to do. And so I got rid of some things right up front, and then the piano, for some reason, I could not let it go.
I understand that.
But then I don't play it, and it just sat there in the living room. So I decided one day to make the decision to let go of the piano. So, and Manny's piano movers are the people that came out to pick it out. So I'll just read a small section of this about preparing for them. And this is when I called Manny's. The voice finally returned. Sorry it took so long. The guys can pick it up this Saturday sometime between noon and 4. Will that work for you? I hesitated. Was I doing the right thing? The woman at the end of the phone needed her answer. I finally choked out a yes. She took my name and address. I said goodbye and stood in the kitchen, empty and numb. Alone in the living room, I studied John's beautiful piano. I remembered us sitting side by side on the piano bench with our hips touching as he played his favorite songs, and we sipped wine late into the darkness. He didn't play it often, but I knew by the way his hands stroked the keys that it brought him pleasure. He loved his piano almost as much as he loved me. I wrestled with the final decision all week. Sleep escaped me. Saturday arrived overcast and gray. I awoke with a familiar knot in my stomach, the pain of separation. By early afternoon, the day was filled with sunshine and blue skies. My spirits lifted. I knew I had made the right decision. John would want me to move on and build a new life. There was no way I was going to ever take piano lessons and commit to daily practice. The only thing I could plink out on the piano was the melody for The Farmer in the Dell. Yes, it was time for the piano to find a new home. And you'll have to buy the book to find out what happens to the piano.
I know how attached I am to my piano.
Oh, it was a difficult decision.
And that would be very difficult for me.
Very difficult.
So, yes, that really hit me. Very good.
Thank
you for reading that.
Thank you very much. You're
and
welcome.
It's well written.
Thank you.
And now let's talk about your other book.
The other one is called Miriam, Daughter of Finnish Immigrants.
Oh, interesting.
And this book is about my grandparents. These are my great-grandparents on my grandfather's side. This was taken in Finland in sometime in the 1800s. But it's about my grandparents coming from Finland in the early 1900s and settling in Babbitt, Minnesota.
Oh, yes.
In 40 below zero weather, where they raised 7 children during the Great Depression.
Oh, my.
And I co-authored this with my Aunt Miriam. It's her story, actually. And this book actually evolved out of Hamlin University, out of a class I took called Her Story. And it was, we had a project to interview a woman who had gone through the elementary or school, the public school system, and what their experiences had been as a girl as opposed to if they had been a boy. And so I interviewed my 3 aunts. And so Miriam and that kind of inspired us to start writing a book about our family, because we knew my mother had already passed away, and we weren't sure how many years any of the siblings would be there. So we captured the stories in here. It starts when Miriam's 4, and it ends when she leaves the farm, right before World War II. And then she joins the WACs during World War II. So she was a military woman, which is awesome. And it's quite the story. So, and this book only took 3 years to write. But it went back and forth in the mail between Pennsylvania, where Miriam lived, and my home at the time here in Minnesota. So, and this was first published in 1995 by Sampo Publishing in New Brighton, Minnesota.
Oh.
And then in 2008, when Miriam passed away, I decided to reprint it. We had only printed like 500 copies of the book initially.
Oh.
And so, we sold those all out, my aunts and I together. It was really quite a fun project.
Oh, my.
We went to bookstores and readings and events together. And it drew us really close together, which was great.
I bet it did.
So then in 2008, I republished this again, left it exactly the same. I changed the color of the cover and a little bit of the design, but otherwise the whole inside is pretty much the way it's original format.
Wow.
And so that was basically a reprint. And just to give you a sense of northern Minnesota, this is the original homestead. My grandmother's standing in front. I'm sure you can't see that, but she's standing in front with her 4 children, and she's expecting her 5th.
Oh, wow.
And she spent her days alone up there on the farm during the week while my grandfather worked in the mines in Ely.
Oh, my.
So it was a rugged life. I'm amazed they were able to survive up there.
You're right.
And then a good part of the book, because it was the interview was about the educational background, it takes place in the schools. It was about their life as students in school, what they were expected to do in terms of homework. And this is a copy of my mother's report card. So, and speaking of schools, St. Paul Schools actually purchased 150 copies of the book a few years back as an educational resource, supplemental resource for their social studies program.
Oh, perfect.
And I used it a number of times in my classroom with my 3rd and 5th graders.
Oh, yes.
As a read aloud, and they really enjoyed it. So,
that's perfect.
Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll read you a little bit just about my grandmother coming from Finland, and a little bit about my grandfather.
Wonderful.
So this is my grandmother, and remember it's in my aunt's voice, so therefore it's her mother.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Mother Hilja Lukrela Karla was born on October 8, 1888 near Simo, Finland, which is located a short distance from the border of Sweden. She was one of 8 children, 3 boys and 5 girls. Her father was a harbor master who worked long hours helping to bring the boats safely into the port. In his spare time, he worked as a tailor. This is probably where Mother inherited her magic with a needle and thread. When Mother was 21 years of age, she came to America to look for the fabled streets of gold she had been told were here for the asking. However, after 3 years of doing housework for the wealthy members of society, she returned to Finland. But there she found life dull and unpromising. So, in 1913, she returned to America. On the ship coming back to America, she met a young man, Paul Karla, who was to become her husband a few years later. This was truly a shipboard romance that lasted until Mother's death in September 1965. And they came with nothing. I mean, basically the clothes on their back and whatever. So, and then I'll read a little bit about my grandfather. He came also from Finland. And I'll start where he arrives in Montreal, Canada. My grandmother came in through Ellis Island, and my grandfather came in through Canada. So somehow, I don't know quite how it worked, they reconnected in Ely, is where they set up their first house. And then they moved to the property where the family started growing. Mm-hmm. Dad arrived in Montreal, Canada in 1913 with not much more than the clothes on his back. On his first night in Montreal, he was walking down the street with a fellow shipman when he was aware he was being followed by a police officer. He and his friend ducked into a tavern to avoid trouble, only to find the lawman following him into the bar. By this time, Dad and his friend were terrified to be followed thus by the police, wondering what the law they had broken. Fortunately, the bartender knew enough Finnish and English to clarify the situation for the new immigrants. The policeman explained to the bartender, who in turn explained to Dad, that he admired Dad's handmade Finnish boots and wanted to buy them. Needless to say, no deal was made. The boots were the only pair of shoes Dad owned, and he was not about to start his new life in his bare feet. So the book is written with Miriam's voice, and it has a lot of humor. And,
yes, I love that. I love that humor. And I have a dear friend that's Finnish. And when you're reading, it's just so amazing because I'm connecting with so many things about that. Because I'm into Norwegian genealogy.
Okay.
And I'm heading a couple of reunion groups right now in North Dakota. And we're working on a reunion or a genealogy book that's going to be published this summer.
Great, super. Well, you'll have to keep me updated.
Yes. And then that is really not a whole lot of stories. But here's the neat thing. I have an archivist cousin who's up at Concordia College in Moorhead.
Sure.
And he has written 2 of my genealogies.
Okay.
And he's done all the research and everything. And I happen to be double related to him. So I'm always using him to bounce off ideas. And he is the one that said to me at one point, we have to get the stories of the older generation.
I agree.
And guess what? We're going to put them in a book.
Good for you.
And I was like, oh, yeah, that's a pretty good idea.
It is.
And not too long ago, I took that out and I read them again.
Mm-hmm.
And what fun. And a lot of them are my dad's, my grandma's.
Absolutely.
And so that's very personal. And then guess what we did? We made it into a cookbook.
Great.
So we have all the recipes as well from the family.
Fantastic.
And we opened it to everybody all over, around the U.S. mostly. We did get a couple recipes from Norway because we had some contacts there.
Very interesting.
So that is what we did with that one piece, although there's also another genealogy book as well that we published. He published.
Well,
but anyway, it's so nice to have somebody like that in the family.
Absolutely. And you know, those stories, once those people are gone, they're gone. And there's all the siblings, all the siblings in the family, everyone is no longer there. So
and already, 10 years ago, I lost my dad. And I already have a long list of questions for him. And if only I could have thought of that
I know.
before, because I could have asked them all those questions. But the more I read, the more my interest goes up, and I wonder, how they survived on those early farms, and that it started in a sod hut, and then eventually they built a house, and then they built churches, and all of this thing they went through was so little, hardly enough to support themselves and eat.
I know, absolutely.
So I have a lot of admiration for them.
Absolutely.
Coming to America and then journeying to get to a place where they could live and work.
Absolutely, with very little support. I mean, it was basically their own, well, like the Finns call it, their own sisu, their determination.
Is that
and
what they
ability,
call
yes,
it?
and their
Oh.
commitment to making it, because it was a hard life, and it was
Oh,
not exactly a
yes.
warm place up there either.
Definitely.
Yes.
That's a tough. Well, it's very similar to northern North Dakota, where I'm from.
Exactly.
So the weather was against them many times,
Absolutely.
many, many times. So,
Absolutely.
there's just so many connections to you. I almost feel like I know you now.
I feel like I know you too now.
It's
I'm
just
really
wonderful to
excited.
hear those things, and I just, I love the thought of your books.
Well, thank
They're
you.
both very special, and I certainly will look forward to hearing about the new one.
Oh, good. And that helps me. That inspires me to keep
Oh,
writing when
you
people are
must
waiting
keep
for that
going.
to come out.
You really must keep going, because you've said so many things, and you've addressed so many things that I like to hear about and I like to learn more about. And I think also the whole thing where you're addressing the grief is so important.
It is.
And some people never really recover.
You know, this is one thing I tell a lot of people, is that you get better, and the grief softens, but it's
Yes.
always a part of you. Your life is changed in a very
It's with
permanent
you
way
forever.
And you carry it forward. And like the last paragraph, I think in my book, I read this for another interview, and you carry it forward with you, but you find a new life. And I said, during my years alone, I discovered a strength and perseverance inside me that I knew would always be there no matter what. Knowing that loss would happen again, I planned to grasp the morning sunrises like they were the first crimson horizon I had ever seen. I realized life on earth is a process of sunrises and sunsets, and in between you breathe and live what life brings you. So, I can't.
That's very well said.
And I tell other widows and widowers, you'll carry those memories forward with you.
How
It's
true.
always part of your life. But you're right. It's a difficult process to go through, and everybody has a different timeline on it. That's the thing.
That's right. And I've experienced a little bit personally with a close friend and a close family member. So I definitely am going to recommend your books.
Well, thank you.
And I do want to thank you for coming out here to Hudson today and talking to me and being on our show. And I just have enjoyed it so very much.
Well,
And we will put some information on the screen so that people can find you in the books.
wonderful.
Okay?
And I thank you so much, Bobby, for connecting with me and inviting me. This has been a wonderful, wonderful afternoon with you.
Delightful.
I enjoyed it very, very
Wonderful. Thank you.
much. Thank you.
And I just want to say to our audience, I hope you enjoyed this interview. And if you need any more information, you know where to contact me. So thanks for listening again today.